All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Magdalena Kroll. I'm Associate Dean of Research, Innovation, Enterprise, and Partnership here at the Lausanne School of Engineering, and I'll be your MC for the ceremony. Thank you for joining us today. As many of you know, December 6th was declared the National Day of Remembrance and Action on Violence Against Women by Canada's Parliament following the murder of 14 women at l'École Polytechnique in Montreal on this day in 1989. Today, we are gathered here to reflect upon this tragedy and to remember the 14 women who lost their lives. It is also a time to remember all women who have lost their lives due to gender-based violence. We recognize that our audience are people with lives, histories, and struggles that we are not privy to. As such, please note that the memorial ceremony will mention different forms of sexual violence, including sexual assault, sexual harassment, and murder. Please prioritize your health and well-being during the ceremony. If you need to step out and take a break, please do so. Room 102A has been designated as a comfort space throughout the ceremony. Marcy Campbell, a counselor from Student Counseling and Development, will be available in room 102A to assist you. This space is located near the front entrance of the building on the left-hand side as you exit the eatery. I would now like to invite Dr. Nana Robinson, Vice Provost Students, to share the traditional land acknowledgement and remarks.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Nona Robinson. I'm the Vice Provost Students at York University, and my pronouns are she and her. I'd like to thank the organizers for inviting us here today and also for organizing this very important memorial. I'd like to start with a land acknowledgement, and I'd like to encourage all of us to use it as a time of reflection. I find it particularly poignant that this week we've learned of the murder of 4 Indigenous women in Winnipeg, which is part of the ongoing and appalling tragedy of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. They are Rebecca Contois, Mercedes Miron, Morgan Harris, and the community has asked a still unknown woman be called Buffalo Woman. We recognize that many Indigenous nations have long-standing relationships with the territories upon which York University campuses are located that precede the establishment of York University. York University acknowledges its presence on the traditional territory of many Indigenous nations. The area known as Takaranto has been caretaken by the Anishinaabeg Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Huron-Wendat. It's now home to many First Nations, Inuit, and Métis communities. We acknowledge the current treaty holders, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. This territory is subject of the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement to peaceably share and care for the Great Lakes region. I also take this opportunity to reaffirm my own commitment to reconciliation and to learning about and addressing historic and current injustices against Indigenous peoples. We are here today to observe the National Day of Remembrance and Action on Violence Against Women. This day, as we've heard, is held in honor of the 14 women who were murdered at Polytechnique Montréal, which was formerly known as École Polytechnique de Montréal in 1989. December 6th is a time to mark for remembrance and is also a call to action. There is still so much work to be done to challenge gender and gender identity-based violence in our communities, and I commit to continuing to support this at York University and in our communities. The misogyny continues. We've been seeing the surge in anti-women legislation across the world. We see the provocative online misogyny, such as men's rights activists and incels who goad each other to attack women. We witness the violence against women protesting for their freedom in Iran, and we mourn for the continued injustice of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls in Canada. Acts of misogyny and gender-based violence are occurring everywhere. In the late 80s and early 1990s, I was a young, publicly feminist university student. I was involved in campus media and student politics, as were many of my friends and colleagues. The Montreal massacre touched us personally. The deliberate targeting of women engineering students in Montreal because they dared to study in a traditionally male field was terrifying. The fact that the murderer claimed that he was fighting feminism and the later discovery that he listed many other feminists as targets added to the horror of this event. For many of us, it was our formative event, as was the moon landing perhaps for an earlier one or 9/11 for a later one. What was deeply troubling were the deniers, including in the media and politics, who embraced the narrative of the lone troubled gunman, which is something we still see happening, ignoring or denying the underlying anti-feminist hate. We were angry, we were afraid, but we were determined not to allow this to stop working to combat inequities against women and other people experiencing prejudice, and continuing to tackle the systemic gender-based barriers that existed simply due to our identity. The Montreal Massacre reverberated across Canada, and most particularly in our universities. These women were women like the rest of us. These were students like the rest of us, and we would not forget. Universities can and must play an important role in challenging the narrative of misogyny, and everyone, regardless of how they identify, deserves to feel a sense of belonging and safety. York stands in solidarity with women and gender diverse people in the fight for our civil and social rights, for justice, and for equity. While we mourn, we work for change, and I would like to end on a note of hope. Throughout the world and in Canada, although there have been many setbacks and further tragedies, there are untold dedicated individuals and groups who are making a difference, who are advancing our freedom, and who are challenging systems of inequity. We have made change, and we will continue to do so, and we will prevail. I want to thank everyone for joining us to honor the memory of those affected by misogynistic violence. Today is an opportunity to pledge again our collective commitment to addressing and preventing gender-based violence in our communities. Thank you.
Thank you. I would now like to welcome Spirit Wind to share an honor song. Spirit Wind is a Toronto-based hand drum collective. Members are Saria Ansari, Anna Samioli, Marie-May Perpal, and Michelle Perpal. Thank you, Spirit Wind. Our next speaker is York University President and Vice Chancellor, Rhonda Lanton.
Good morning, everyone, and I would also like to thank Spirit Wind very much for that honor song. Thank you, Magdalena, and good morning, everyone. Bonjour and bonjour. As has already been remarked, on December 6th, 1989, 14 women were murdered at l'École Polytechnique de Montréal in a brutal act of gender-based violence. Newspapers at the time claimed that, as has been said, that this particular incident was the responsibility of one disturbed individual. And I have to say that that narrative in many different settings continues to emerge. It's incredibly important that we recognize and bring awareness to the issue that incidences of femicide are not isolated events, but are instead connected to a pattern of centuries-old misogyny. Current statistics demonstrate that women are frequent victims of gender-based violence. Stats Canada 2019 General Social Survey on Victimization reported that women are violently victimized at a rate nearly double that of men, and that every 6 days a woman in Canada is killed by her intimate partner. A World Health Organization analysis of data between 2000 and 2018 across 161 countries and areas found that nearly 1 in 3, or 30% of women around the world, have been subjected to sexual or physical violence. And unfortunately, gender-based violence remains all too prevalent throughout the world. On September 16th, a 22-year-old Iranian woman named Mahsa Amini made the news when she was killed under suspicious circumstances for failing to wear a hijab, an event that has sparked thousands of people in Iran and around the world to advocate for freedom of expression and gender equality. In 1991, when the Parliament of Canada established the National Day of Remembrance and Action on Violence Against Women to remember and to honor the victims of December 6, 1989, they provided us with the opportunity to reflect on and learn from the past, to amplify the voices of survivors in the present, and to recommit to creating a future free from gender-based violence. In our reflections, we must also recognize the complex nature of intersectionality and how different factors can combine to form a matrix of oppression. Indigenous women and girls, gender diverse members, transgender women, Black and racialized women, young women, women who are newcomers to Canada, women with disabilities, and women who live in northern or remote communities are disproportionately affected by gender-based violence. It is these power imbalances between men and women, minority and majority groups, privileged and underprivileged communities that pose a threat to peace, justice, and equality in our societies and signify a critical human rights issue that must be addressed. At York, our 2025 University Academic Plan, 2020 to 2025 University Academic Plan, Building a Better Future. It serves as a blueprint for a meaningful action that advances the UN Sustainable Development Goals, including SDG 5 that talks specifically about gender equality, for which York ranks #1 in Canada and #21 globally. And we are continuing to expand our capacity in what we have to do together to write the future. Pan-university strategies, action plans, policies, frameworks geared toward enhancing accessibility, equity, diversity, and inclusivity. Interdisciplinary initiatives that provide mentorship and support to disadvantaged communities, like the Lassonde 50-50 Challenge, which seeks to make Lassonde a leader in gender diversity among Canadian engineering schools. And continued advocacy through cutting-edge research, academic programs, our campus services, such as the Center for Sexual Violence Response, Support, and Education, which provides support, services, training, and accommodations for survivors. In fact, just last week, we announced our support for the It's Not Just campaign led by the Honorable Marcy Ian, Minister for Women and Gender Equality and Youth, which aims to raise youth awareness of physical, emotional, financial, and sexual gender-based violence, and is aligned with the 16 Days of Activism Against Gender-Based Violence International Campaign. I would like to thank our MC, Dr. Magdalena Kroll, Jessica Thayer from the Center for Sexual Violence Response, Support and Education, the Lassonde Events Coordinator, Melissa Abraham, the Institutional Events Team, and all of the individuals at York. It's incredibly important that we acknowledge all of those who have worked very hard to bring us here together to create the space and the time for this reflection. And each of you who have also taken the time to prioritize this event to be here today. Thank you. If you are a victim of gender-based violence or know someone who is, please know that York does have supports in place. Through our Center for Sexual Violence Response Support and Education, for example, you can reach out and get the support that you may need. I cannot emphasize enough the role that we must all play to support our loved ones, our friends, and our colleagues. When we create a safe space to talk about these issues without judgment, we eradicate the stigma that too often prevents people from coming forward. It has been 33 years since this tragedy in Montreal. Although there have been many encouraging developments across the world since then, we must not forget that there is still much more work to be done. As a sociologist myself and having my own research and programmatic areas are in family violence and sexual harassment, gender-based violence, I have to say that back in the 1980s, when I was doing this work, I did not think I would be here today, still talking about what a widespread problem we are facing. I am hopeful, though, I want to end on a hopeful note as well, that when I see the commitment of our community, that we will together continue to find ways to harness our power as progressive global citizens united in our goal to create a safer future for all, one that respects the rights of every member of our community to learn, work, and live free from violence and harassment of any kind. Thank you so much for joining us today. Merci, miigwech.
Thank you, Rhonda. Please join me in welcoming our keynote speaker, Lily Pouzrand, Director of Programs and Services at Sandgate Women's Shelter. Lily is a social services leader in the violence against women sector. She is an expert in gender-based violence, intersectionality, inclusivity, and accessibility. Welcome.
Hi, everyone. It's an honor to be here. Thanks for your generous invitation. Before starting, I have to acknowledge a few things. I'm standing here as an immigrant woman from Iran. I came to Canada in 1999. I had to flee my land. I'm here as an alumni to York. I'm graduated from Women's Studies Department in 2007, and then Osgood with feminism and the intersectionality of feminism and law, and then started to work as an advocate, as a gender-based expert, if there is such an expertise, which we don't want that, but it is what it is. We are in business and we have to be the advocate. Not only provided services to immigrant women, women from all ethnic backgrounds, but I was so fortunate and privileged to be able to provide services up north, close to Georgina Island for the past 8 years. Unfortunately, I saw a lot, I witnessed a lot. I'm here in a position of victim, survivor, and advocate, and as a spiritual person, I always acknowledge my privileged position. And also, I believe in the life cycle. So if I'm back here on campus after 10 years, I really appreciate it and honor it, and I'm humbled for this invitation. So what I want to go through is a journey. I truly believe in women's narrative. The history is written by male, and our side of the history is missed. So many things, so many valuable points have been mentioned already, but what I want to do is a journey from personal to political, national to international, basically. Just a month after the Islamic Revolution in 1979, the compulsory hijab was imposed on Iranian women. Once again, the patriarchy took over women's freedom. I was only 4. And I was marching on the street on March 8th with my mother and grandmother in Tehran to demonstrate against mandatory hijab. The morality police force attacked women and children, us. I remember clearly that they were throwing stones and rocks at us while chanting, Ya Rusari, Ya Tusari, means either put the hijab on your head or we will hit you on the head. That was their slogan 43 years ago. I was too scared and tried to hide behind my grandmom. I was not sure why they want us so badly to cover our hair. I couldn't understand why they are punishing us for not wanting it. The answer was simple, but it was too complicated for me to understand. Women's personal is political. 43 years later, the world witnessed Mahsa Jina Amini, a 22-year-old Iranian woman who was murdered at the hands of morality police in Tehran, not because she was not wearing the hijab, because they felt she was not wearing a good hijab. They hit her on her head and killed her. Mission accomplished. They delivered the promise which was chanted on March 8th of 43 years ago, 1979, in the street. Either put the hijab on your head or I will hit you on the head. Aside from many gender discriminatory laws passed and imposed by the regime on Iranian women to treat them as the second-class citizen, their female bodies also were abused by political rapes and assaults in the past 43 years. You may never heard about it, and you may not know that so many Iranian women's political activists, human rights activists, or women's rights activists have been raped a few hours before execution in the hands of their interrogators and the police and the prison's guards. The ideological system believed that if a woman dies a virgin, she will go straight to the heaven. To ensure our young women will be going straight to the hell after hanging by an execution, they were raping women before execution. Particularly that happened during the mass execution of 1980 and 1989 in Tehran and many other kind of cities. I know so many families that they had their girls victim. Did I say 1989 massacre in Iran? Let's pause. Let's take a deep breath and leave the Iranian women's rights activists in prison in Iran and have a travel here to Canada. I had no idea where Canada is at that point. We were dealing with a bigger, trauma and situation in Iran. Later I learned about it. It was a cold December day in Montreal, and the Montreal Polytechnic University was as usual busy. In a blink of an eye, an act of misogyny shook the nation. 14 beautiful lives were cut short because they were women. The 1989 Montreal massacre is registered in the history. From the other side of the world to this side of the world, still we can see the gender-based violence in Iran and in Canada in 1 year, 2 massacres. 33 years later, we are here to acknowledge December 6th, the National Day of Remembrance and Action on Violence Against Women. We are here to honor 14 outstanding young women whose dream cut short. More than ever in the past few months at least, we know that gender-based violence and discrimination have no border. It is real, it is severe, it is happening daily everywhere. I'm standing here today as a victim, as a survivor, and as an advocate. I still remember my own terrifying confinement in Morality Police's detention center in Tehran, where Mahsa was murdered. It was 1992. The so-called judge forced me to undergo a virginity exam at the age of 16 and ordered a criminal fingerprint to be conducted after I was arrested for not wearing hijab at a private family gathering. He later laid charges against me and was sentenced to receive 20 lashes by wife. When my dad begged him for forgiveness, the judge said, "You bastard, shut up. If you had any honor, you wouldn't allow your daughter to sit with a bunch of men with no hijab." He then changed the sentence and increased the number of lashes from 20 to 30. In 1997, while I was studying law in Tehran, I was threatened with being kidnapped, raped, and murdered by the intelligence officer who was assigned to interrogate my journalist father and my women's rights activist mother. I was denied writing the bar exam because of women's rights activities. I was lucky enough that I could leave my homeland before they arrested me and came to Canada in 1999 as a refugee. However, they arrested my mother, they kidnapped and later murdered my dad. Since 2011, I have worked directly with abused women and their children in many different capacities in Canada. Based on the formal stats, 1 out of 5 Canadian women has experienced some sexual abuse in her life, and 1 out of 3 Canadian women has experienced some gender-based violence in her life. As a woman dedicated to providing services to abused women and girls, I would like to be honest and transparent with you. The numbers are much higher than what we know through the stat. Not every woman is aware of her right. Not every woman is aware of how to ask, to request for support, and not every woman discloses the abuse while she is receiving support. And not every woman can get out of the systematic cycle of abuse. It may shock you to know, based on the York Regional Police information, our young girls are at the risk of grooming for human trafficking by their schoolmates, by their classmates, as young as 8, means grade 2 and 3. And it's happening right beside us in our neighborhood. You may not believe the honor-based crimes are happening at our colleges and universities, and I provided services to a few young women from York University a few years ago. Young, bright girls are scooped out of their programs by their families due to forced marriage. You may not want to believe that the level of underreported domestic violence around us, because women do not know how to ask for help or do not want to report the abuser, is much higher, and it's unbelievable. And we provide services based on their will. We don't report, so we know the number, but the stat doesn't show them. As we gather together today, let's once again commit to being more sensitive, work together to raise awareness, and keep educating our communities and society to prevent the widespread gender-based violence epidemic. We need to have enough services and dedicated, trained staff in the violence against women sector to wrap around victims. It takes a village to support a gender-based violence victim. It needs a handful of experts such as sexual assault centers, emergency shelters, housing services, trained law enforcement system, trauma-informed counseling, court support services, harm reduction trained staff, accessible medical experts, non-judgmental victim services, and name it, so on and so forth. It is necessary to have all of them to be able to walk a woman from the victim position to a survivor position. And it may take a long time. We know our hands are tied, resources are limited, fundings are targeted. There is only one way around it, not to give up advocacy. We all need to be the ambassador of change, not only today, but every day. Let's remember, Mahsa's tragic death in Iran could connect not only with women in Iran, but also worldwide. Women across generations from different religions, sexuality, or ethnic background, with various political views, could find a piece of Mahsa in themselves. Mahsa triggers women's historical trauma and silence unfair daily battle with systematic misogyny and gender apartheid. The slogan, Zan, Zendegi, Azadi, woman, life, freedom, came to life after Mahsa's death. But it portrayed the gender apartheid, not only it portrayed the gender apartheid regimes and crimes against Iranian women, but also became a full description manifesto testifying on systematic human rights violation against religion and ethnic minorities, religious minorities, LGBTQ+ communities, writers, journalists, lawyers, activists, artists, workers, teachers, students, and simply anyone who wants gender equality. Woman, life, freedom could create a global awareness, allyship, and action plan for support, not only for Iranian women, but women around the world. Women's rights became the priority on every politician's task list, which was unusual before. Human rights organizations and even the United Nations acknowledge this priority now. Women, life, freedom became the headline of the news and a topic at our dinner tables at home. Let's take this opportunity and stay together. Let's build the future together to prevent more gender-based violence at our campuses, in our neighborhood, in our country, and hopefully internationally. Thank you.
Thank you, Lily. I know that was not easy, and we thank you. I would like to welcome Janelle Aziz to speak. Janelle is a master's student here at Civil Engineering Department at Lassonde.
Hello, everyone. Let me go over. Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Janelle Aziz. My pronouns are she and her, and I am a civil engineering master's student here at Lassonde School of Engineering. I have been a part of this community for about 6 years now, as I graduated from my bachelor's degree this June, and I decided to continue my education here. I appreciate you all for joining us here today to reflect on the tragedy that occurred at École Polytechnique in Montreal 33 years ago, as well as reflect on the ongoing tragedies and violence against women in countries like Canada, Iran, India, and more. However, today is also a day to acknowledge and appreciate all the work and all the progress made to try to end gender-based violence in our homes, in our communities, and in our schools. I am honored here to speak and share my experiences of being a racialized woman with diverse identity markers in STEM. I'm here to share how I'm using my identity to break barriers and to empower those around me, to create differences within their own lives and within their community. Growing up, the one thing my parents instilled on me was that my education is one of the few things no one can take away from me. Learning that not all females have a safe education pathway was scary. I've also personally experienced situations where my intelligence was undermined, where I was mansplained, or where my skill sets were challenged based on gender normative roles. And this all happened by my male counterparts here at university. Unfortunately, the sly comments, the jokes, and all the unconscious biases that people have no matter what position they hold, is still prevalent. Thus, my goal here is to foster a community that provides representation to those around me and to give hope to those who may not or may believe that they could fill certain positions in society. In my undergraduate degree, I was the recipient of Lausanne Citizenship Medal, which is awarded to a student who, does a lot of extracurricular contributions to Lausanne. I held multiple executive roles as well as presidency positions. And I was also part of the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion EDI committee of Lausanne, where I participated in faculty discussions and addressed social issues and equity work within this community. I also spent time volunteering for the Women in Science and Engineering Club, which is WISE, as well as the Bergeron and Entrepreneurs in Science and Technology Best Lab, where we held female and non-binary empowering STEM events, as well as entrepreneurial hackathons that revolved around the UN sustainability goals, such as gender equality and quality education. However, these experiences were not comparable to the role that I held at Week 0, which is Lausanne Social Orientation Week, where we welcome incoming students to Lausanne. This was my most influential role in terms of fostering a safe environment for female identifying students to university. At all levels of university, as I would provide support, advice, and I would share my experiences, which included providing females, students, advice about reclaiming their space and time in male-dominated environments. Unfortunately, this is something that you may have to do in your first year, because that is what I had to do. And at my time at Lausanne, I have had female students approach me to thank me for inspiring me to get them involved in the Lausanne community, because I provided them an example of who they can become here. Once you spark hope in people, there's nothing that you can do to stop them. And that is why at Lausanne, the support community for female and female identifying students has been growing as the community continues to empower each other. Organizations like WISE and the K2I Academy have aided in the support of marginalized communities here, but there needs to be more representation and showcasing of female and non-binary individuals at Lausanne. Representation matters, so we need to highlight our accomplishments and share it with everyone. The EDI committee that I was a part of actually has funding for those who may want to start initiatives with respect to EDI. So if you have any ideas on how to do that within the Lausanne community, feel free to apply. One thing I do also want to note is you do not need to be directly involved in a subject or a club to promote and share equitable values that encourage opportunities for underrepresented groups. All of us have a role in ending the cycle of gender-based violence by speaking up and keeping those around us accountable for their behaviors. Thank you so much for listening to me share my story, and I hope we continue to make conscious efforts in supporting the women in society and ending gender-based violence. Thank you.
Murdered due to gender-based violence at l'École Polytechnique. I kindly ask all the volunteers who will participate in the memorial to line up on my right. I would also like to call upon Shashmir Sidney to read the names of the 14 women.
Thank you. Hi everyone, my name is Sashmir Sidney, and today we honor the lives of the 14 victims of the Montreal massacre. We remember, on se souvient de Geneviève Bergeron, second year civil engineering student, Hélène Colgan, fourth year mechanical engineering student, Nathalie Croteau, fourth year mechanical engineering student, Barbara Daigneault, fourth year mechanical engineering student, Anne-Marie Edouard, first year chemical engineering student, Maud Aviernik, second year metallurgical engineering student, Maryse Laganière, school budget clerk, Maryse Leclerc, fourth year metallurgical engineering student, Anne-Marie Lemay, fourth year mechanical engineering student, Sonia Pelletier, fourth year mechanical engineering student, Michel Richard, second year metallurgical engineering student, Annie Saint-Arnaud, fourth year mechanical engineering student, Annie Turcotte, first year metallurgical engineering student, et Barbara Klosnik-Vidowicz, first-year nursing student. Thank you, everyone.
I now ask everyone to join me for a moment of silence as we reflect on the tragic loss of these women and all women who have lost their lives to violence. Please rise, if you are able to, in remembrance of these women. Thank you. Please be seated. I'd like to invite Adeze Mabalaja, the president of the York Federation of Students, to present a poem.
Still I Rise, written by Maya Angelou. You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still, like dust, I'll rise. Does my sassiness upset you? Why are you beset with gloom? 'Cause I walk like I've got oil wells pumping in my living room. Just like moons and like suns, with the certainty of tides, just like hopes springing high, still, I'll rise. Did you want to see me broken, bowed head and lowered eyes, shoulders falling down like teardrops, weakened by my soulful cries? Does my haughtiness offend you? Don't you take it awful hard, 'cause I laugh like I've got gold mines digging in my own backyard. You may shoot me with your words, you may cut me with your eyes, you may kill me with your hatefulness, but still, like air, I'll rise. Does my sexiness upset you? Does it come as a surprise that I dance like I've got diamonds at the meeting of my thighs? Out of the huts of history's shame, I rise. Up from a past that's rooted in pain, I rise. I'm a black ocean leaping and wide, welling and swelling I bear in the tide. Leaving behind nights of terror and fear, I rise. Into a daybreak that's wondrously clear, I rise. Bringing the gifts that my ancestors gave, I am the dream and the hope of the slave. I rise, I rise, I rise. Hello everyone, my name is Adeze Mbalaja, my pronouns are she and her, and I'm the president of the York Federation of Students. Bonjour, je m'appelle Adeze, mes pronoms m'appellent elle, je suis le président de la Fédération des étudiants de York University. Today and every day, we remember all of the women affected by gender-based violence, from here on Turtle Island to so-called Israel, to Palestine, to Tamil Elam, to Iran. We remember every single woman affected by the harm and the hurt in misogyny, in gender-based violence, and in sexual violence. We have an inherent responsibility to continue to dismantle the binds of these systems that cause this hurt, that cause this violence, and that cause this shame embedded within our society. We can, we will, and we must do better. Thank you.
I would now like to welcome Paria Shaverdi to present a live painting. You may have seen Paria painting at the back of the room during the ceremony, and she'll now share her art piece with us.
Hello everyone, I'm Paria Shaverdi. life, freedom.
Thank you. Please join me in welcoming the Weeby a cappella group. They will be performing Superwoman by Alicia Keys.
Everywhere I'm looking, nothing seems complete. I'm standing and I'm searching for a better part of me. I hang my head in sorrow, slave to humanity. I wear it on my shoulders, gotta find strength in me. 'Cause I am a superwoman. Yes, I am. Even when I'm a mess, I still put on a vest with an S on my chest. Oh yes, I'm a superwoman. For all the mothers fighting for better days to come, and all my women sitting here trying to come home before the sun.
And all my sisters coming together, say yes I can, say yes I will.
'Cause I am a superwoman. Yes, I am.
Yes, she is.
Even when I'm a mess, I still put on a vest with an S on my chest. Oh yes, I'm a superwoman. When I'm breaking down and I can't be found, and I start to feel weak, 'cause no one knows me underneath these clothes, but I can fly. 'Cause I am a superwoman. Yes, I am. Even when I'm a mess, I still put on a vest with an S on my chest. Oh yes, I'm a superwoman.
Let me tell you that I am a superwoman.
Yes, I am.
Oh yes. Even when I'm a mess, I still put on a vest with an S on my chest. Oh yes, I'm a superwoman. Said I'm a superwoman.
Superwoman.
Amazing, thank you. As our ceremony comes to a close, I'd like to take this opportunity to acknowledge the continued underrepresentation of women in STEM fields, and particularly engineering. The tragedy at L'École Polytechnique took place in the engineering classroom 4 years before I would start my own engineering journey. As such, this day always brings me back to my undergraduate years as an incoming female student, not so shortly after the tragic event, and not much younger than those women that lost their lives. And I'm saddened about the talent, the humor, the creativity, and the intelligence that was lost to us that day. But as I look out at our audience and think about the young women I come in contact daily in my classes, I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that we are doing enough and that their lives will be filled with equality, peace, and justice. On this National Day of Remembrance and Action on Violence Against Women, I encourage you to reflect upon and recommit to addressing the gender gap in engineering and ensure that the STEM community we build is an equitable one for everyone. I challenge you not to look away when you see injustices done, and that you become an ally to those that are underrepresented in our community. Please show your support against gender-based violence by wearing a purple or white ribbon throughout the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. Please note that a webinar on gender-based violence will be taking place at 1 p.m. today. The webinar is entitled Femicide, Intersectionality, and Media and the Media, and will include panelists from the Black Femicide Canada Council, the Native Women's Association of Canada, and the Canadian Femicide Observatory for Justice and Accountability. We encourage you to please join us for this session. We will be streaming the webinar in room 125 at 1 p.m., and you can also register to attend virtually at thecenter.yorku.ca. Thank you all for joining us today.